Decluttering in your 20s is easy because you don't own anything meaningful. But decluttering after 50, that's a completely different game because now it's not just stuff. It's your mom's china, it's your kids' first drawings, it's a chair that your husband used to sit in, and everything around you, it actually has weight. And so that advice from a 25-year-old minimalist, it doesn't apply to you, but this does. And this week we got a letter from Margaret, and she basically wrote in and said, Weldon, my husband passed away 2 years ago. In the house, it feels too big for her. It's too complex. Her daughter wants her to move out or start to downsize so she can plot that future of a moving out and getting into something smaller. But Margaret, in this case, she says, I end up freezing every time I start to go do this process. How do I let go of it all? Well, it is a common scenario. And if you're not in the practice of actually downsizing and shedding and decluttering or editing your stuff, it can feel overwhelming. So, Kristen and I, when we went through our military moves, it was easy because it was easier, I should say, each time because we had practice. But most people, they don't get that kind of practice. It's just like anything, though, the more you do it, the better you become at it. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some techniques to actually be able to do this efficiently. But before we do that, when I read Margaret's letter, there was a piece of it that was missing. And again, what she was asking for is a fair question about how to do this well after and we all have to go through it. If you had a loss or the kids are grown, they've moved out, whatever the case may be, you just feel buried and overwhelmed. And I've actually sat across other people in their kitchen tables who are in Margaret's exact spot. But what Margaret told me was that her husband had passed away 2 years ago. She told me that she knows it's time to do this, and she also told me that she feels guilty, that she can't start. All true, all real feelings, but what she did not say was what done actually looks like. What is that vision for her? Because letting go of everything versus keeping what you means something to you, what you actually need to leave, those are two different goals, two different stated goals, two different decisions that you actually have to make. So the real question isn't, how do I let go of all of it? It's, what do I want to keep and why? And when you answer that, letting go takes care of itself. So, what we're actually going to walk through today are the 7 things that you need to know about decluttering after 50. And every one of them, every point is going to point back to the same question. Not how do I get rid of it, but what do I actually want to keep and why? And by the time we're done, you're going to see this whole thing very differently. And if you're staring at a house that feels too full right now, you're going to know exactly where to start. So, point number 1, decide what keep means before you touch a single box. So, we're going to put some definitions in place because most people, they start with what can I throw away? That's backwards. And it's exactly why Margaret is freezing here. When the default is get rid of it, every object to you becomes a tiny argument that you have to win in your own mind. So let's flip it. Before you open a closet, decide, what does keep mean for this season of your life, this next season? Not forever, just for now. And I worked with a couple where they were empty nesters and they sold their 5-bedroom and they moved into a patio home. So, of course, they had less house, less stress, more life. That was the equation that they were after. We didn't start with the donate pile. We started with the one sentence. What does this next chapter need to hold? Once they answered that, the rest of the house, it gets a lot quieter. All that stuff is not eating at you as you're looking at it. So your first move is not a trash bag. It's a definition. Decide what you're keeping for. What is that vision for this next chapter, next season of life? And then you're going to find that the answer is almost never keep everything. Point number 2, this is the military trick. So decide in seconds, not in stories. And here's where the military experience, where it earns its keep. When you move every 2 or 3 years, sometimes overseas, sometimes with short notice, you can't afford to hold every object up to the light and just tell yourself the whole story behind it. So otherwise, you'd never finish. And you build a muscle, that muscle memory, and you decide on criteria, not the memory attached to the thing. That's not coldness. That's not intended to be coldness. That is practice. So the first move, that is brutal. The fifth one, though, you've got a system, and the system is what protects you from the emotional ambush, if you will. So you're not in the practice of doing this. And in this case, Margaret, that's not a flaw, it's just a fact. So we borrow the muscle. We use criteria instead of stories, at least for the first pass. The stories, they get their turn later with the things that earn it, right? And that we want to keep as a part of our life. Okay, now point number 3, photograph it. You've heard me say this in other videos. This is a free option. The memory, again, it's an object, it's not the memory itself. And this is the one that helps people just unlock that emotion and be able to move forward. The kids' drawings are a great example of this. So the dress that you wore once, the juicer that you used twice, maybe you got it as a wedding gift or something. You're not keeping the object, you're keeping the memory just in a different form, because innately as people, we're afraid that if the object goes away, the memory goes with it, and it doesn't. So take that photo, keep the image, free the thing to be able to go to the donate pile, to the sell pile, wherever it needs to go. It'll have a more useful life than in the closet or in the cabinet that you currently have it stored in. And you still have that picture and the story with it. Notice this ties straight back to our question. Keep the memory. That is a different goal than keep the object. So once you separate those two, you can keep almost every memory and release almost every object. That's the whole game. That's the whole point of this. Okay, point number 4. This is the 3-bin rule for the things that you truly can't decide. And sometimes you're not going to be able to release something. It's just going to be sitting on you. It's going to be weighing on you. It's okay, fair enough. Give it a container, literally. Pick a fixed number of bins. 3 is what I recommend. Whatever fits into those bins is safe. You don't have to use it, you don't have to display it or justify it. The point isn't the bins, it's the boundary. So everything I can't part with is infinite. There's no defined timeline or insight right there. What fits in 3 bins, though, that's a decision that you can make. And here's the quiet part. Most people never fill all 3 bins. The boundary does the work. It turns an impossible situation of an open-ended cache of stuff into a finite, doable choice. Now, here's a quick gut check before we keep going, because it's easy to lose in the weeds. If you find yourself agonizing over a single object, you've slipped back into the wrong question. You're not auditing your past. You're deciding what your next chapter holds. Remember that. Come back to that in the drawer that's in front of you right now. That is going to get a lot lighter as you continue to go through it, the emotions behind it. Point number 5. So treat a gift as the thought, not the object. So guilt over gifts, that keeps more clutter in homes than almost anything else. We feel like releasing a gift is releasing the person's love that gave it to us. Like, it's not. The gift was the thoughtfulness, them picking it out, wrapping it, finding the time to hand it to you. That's already happened. That part is permanent. The object is just the wrapper, the thought in this case, what it arrived in. And I used the juicer example earlier. I'll use it again because it happens to be one that was in our family. Every time you open that cabinet, there it is. It's a little jolt of guilt. But the love behind it was never in the juicer. It was in the giving. And the giving, that's done. Handing that juicer to someone who's actually going to use it doesn't erase the gesture. It finally lets the gesture rest. No one who loves you wants you burdened by something that you can't use. So letting it go to someone who's actually going to use it, it honors the gift more than letting it just gather dust in the cabinet. And just think of yourself. When's the last time you actually asked somebody, hey, you still using that juicer I gave you from 15 years ago? It's not likely, right? We're all human beings, and you gave it with heart to them. They got their enjoyment. And so does it matter at the end of the day? It doesn't. All right, here's point number 6. Start with one drawer. So momentum, it beats marathons. The biggest mistake that I see, and I've made it myself, is trying to do the whole house in a weekend. You end up with 5 rooms just torn apart, and that gives you a feeling of defeat where you go right back to avoiding that room that you just tore apart. So, the better approach, in my opinion, is 1 room, and better yet, 1 drawer, 1 shelf, 1 closet. Finish it completely. The finished space becomes the fuel. It's the "I can breathe again." That feeling that makes you want to move on to the next one. Decluttering after 50 is a practice, not an event. You're not in a race. You're building a muscle the same way that we built it as a military family when we would move, across the country. And we did that for more than 10 plus times over a 20-year period. Small reps, finished reps, then repeat. Point number 7, do it now so your kids don't have to do it later while they're grieving. And here's the part that nobody says out loud, and it brings us all the way back to our first question. The reason to define what you keep now, while it's still your choice, your story, your hands, is that people that love you, they don't have to guess later on in the middle of their grief. In this case, Margaret's daughter wants to help her declutter this spring. That is a gift. Doing this together while Margaret can say, "This one stays, this one goes, and here's why." That means her daughter inherits decisions instead of a house full of question marks. That's the difference between let go of it, all of it, and keep what matters. One leaves your family a burden. The other, it leaves them a map. You're not just clearing a house at that point. You're deciding what your story holds. And that's a decision only you can make. So if you take one thing from this, let this be your next step. Before you touch a box this weekend, write down one sentence. What does this next chapter of my life need to hold? Not what can I throw away? What do I want to keep and why? That one sentence is the entire strategy. Everything else is just follow through. Remember, just one drawer at a time. I'm Weldon Hobbs, and when we're making big decisions, we start with your life goal, we optimize it for wealth, and then we focus on the real estate. Remember, good decisions, they start with good information, and I'll see you in the next one.